Okay. Welcome to the Pathleaders podcast. My name is Dave Darmstandler. I'm co-CEO, co-founder of DataPath, and have our co-host here with us, Oren. Hello, Oren.
Hi, I'm Oren Potts, Director of Education here at DataPath.
And along with us, in the spirit of Cybersecurity Month, we also have Michael from our team in security. Michael, what's happening?
Hello, I'm Michael Schilber. I'm a senior cybersecurity engineer here at DataPath. Excited to be here on the pod.
Nice. Well, good to have you. As we said, it's Cybersecurity Month, so we're trying to just really start this podcast out with just what are some basics as an organization. Let's just say you're doing nothing, you're doing very little around security, or maybe just the conversation in general or the topic in general just terrifies you. So the point of this podcast today is, where can you start, and what are some of the things that we're doing for organizations, things we're seeing that are really making a difference within security. Or maybe I'll just start with you. What are you seeing in security, and what do you see as far as, if you come into an organization, particularly a school district, an example, those are large environments, kind of where are you starting with those districts? Kind of where's some kind of low-hanging fruit or some things that you kind of implement out the gate that you feel really is making a difference as far as security for those organizations?
Yeah, so I would say the lowest hanging fruit with the highest amount of impact, so lowest cost, highest amount of impact, is going to be security awareness training. And this is a training program that gets pushed out to all staff that have email addresses, right? So it could even be custodial or maintenance. If they have an email address through your organization, they're going to want to be trained. So security awareness training is going to give them the tools that they need to identify phishing emails. Anytime they'll get text messages. I'm sure some of you get text messages on your phone asking for certain codes. It goes over the basics of security hygiene when using email, when using your phone, those kinds of things. In terms of a cost perspective, it's the lower cost and high impact. That's usually one of the first things that we go over with the schools, and mostly because it's such a huge attack vector. You have all your staff that are on your network that could expose. So it's hands down, that's one of the first things that we talk about.
And I've seen numbers that are obviously in the high 90 percentile as far as where breaches are coming from, as far as it being a user that's clicking on, say, just something that came through their email that wasn't even addressed to them. And obviously, further down the line with horror stories is more around, somebody gets an email supposedly from the CEO or CFO, and they go ahead and wire a bunch of money without really even just reading the email closely and going, hey, is this actually from my CFO's email address even match up? Would my CFO ever actually even send me this email, right? Would, pick up the phone and make a phone call and verify, right? Mike, what are you seeing around just, user training and some of the things, starting there, like as Oren said, kind of the very beginnings is just, beginning to bring awareness to your users and to help them understand kind of where the threats are. I guess, what are you seeing as far as a benefit from user training and some of the help there?
Yeah, so in places that we do training, we do see an uptick in submitted tickets to us of like, hey, is this real? Is this fake? Especially if the training platform comes with simulated phishing. If seeing an uptick in that is very good, because that means people are actually paying attention instead of just clicking, going through everything. Or, technically a benefit is not even looking at it at all, but kind of hard to gauge metrics with that.
Simulated phishing, give us an example of simulated phishing. Like, if you don't know anything, what would be a simulated phishing attack?
Yeah, so it'd be a platform that sends an email that looks like they're trying to steal information for you, or they're pretending to be Facebook or Instagram, maybe your bank, maybe your CEO, could be even your internal IT department or HR, and they're trying to get you to engage with them in a way like somebody actually trying to steal from you would. And the point of it is for you, the end user, to recognize that this looks funny. Like, no, we don't communicate using HR requests, at mydomain.com or whatever, and tell somebody in IT or like talk to their manager about it, like start looking at it and realizing what's happening.
So yeah, and obviously we started doing this data path years ago. I believe my numbers, I've only clicked on one simulated attack, which was a Netflix email. It told me something about my account. It looked legitimate. It was really well done. It probably came from Michael, I'm sure, directly.
I run the program, Dave, and I have failed one myself. It knows, like it was perfectly timed after the Halloween party, and it said we have pictures of everybody's costume. And I was like, oh, I want to see the costumes. Oh no.
Well done. Well done.
Played myself.
So obviously we know that's a huge part of it, right? I mean, look at some of the history of hacking. Some of these guys weren't even that technical. It was more just, being able to use some kind of social influence or, simply an email or something that wasn't even crafted very well that got them access to data or information or systems that they shouldn't have had access to. But beyond that, kind of, obviously we came up in an age where there was, antivirus, there was different tools that we felt were working. Clearly some of those no longer work, aren't as relevant. So Michael, what are you seeing now as far as environments and obviously what we're deploying a data path for customers, just around, what's keeping, at a base level, what's keeping, customers safe?
Yeah, at a baseline, you need to deploy some sort of security agent on all your endpoints, right? So an endpoint detection and response is kind of the new wave of stuff. It's behavioral based and process based. It's not just looking, at file hashes anymore. And at bare minimum, you need to have something there. And then obviously to augment that, you need somebody looking at it, whether it's your own internal team, if you have the staff and the skills to do so and recognize what's the data is, being provided to you through it, or through the third party to like help triage alerts and like send you the relevant information. Like for us, we like Huntress.
So some of the fancy, like obviously acronyms, right? That's what IT is known for, is EDR, right? So you're talking about EDR and Oren, what have you seen in EDR that's been helpful for customers, some of the situations you've heard of and some of the things it's kept from, kind of exploiting the entire network?
Yeah, with an EDR, especially the one that we use, it will lock stations down, right? So to prevent the spread of whatever compromise that they may have clicked on or been exposed to. One of the key things is what Michael said, is that you need to have a resource that can interpret that data. So that's one thing to look out for when you're shopping around, you're looking for an EDR solution, is to make sure you understand what they're delivering. Some of the EDR solutions, they're great. They give you tons of great data, but they're going to hand that over to you on a platter for your team to interpret and to take action upon. So it's just understanding your team and making sure that they can interpret that data and turn it into actionable items for remediation.
Yeah. So what you're saying, some of the EDRs don't even actually take action. They're just essentially more informational. So they're not going to go and, if something comes in, which it would more than likely at 2 a.m, it's not going to contain, essentially that device that's infected. It's not going to quarantine it because it's going to send information to your team to say, hey, you need to quarantine this device. And by then, it may have spread throughout the network, right?
Well, I know they have, and Mike, you can back me up here, correct me if I'm wrong. I know they have some basic features, just like another antivirus, where it'll quarantine machines if it finds something that's attempting to spread. But for the behavioral aspect and for connecting the dots of, this is a much larger threat, it's going to create those alerts. And yes, they will come over at 2 a.m. and someone's going to get that phone call and they're going to say, so what do I do here? Well, it's up to you. So just be aware there's certain products out there that are going to take that next step of remediation. And then there's others that are just going to be almost like a reporting mechanism. It's filtering out the thousands of alerts that are coming through, distilling them down to the most important ones. And there's going to be a flavor of EDR that are just going to hand you that, and then other flavors that they'll actually take action on.
So, Michael, like even, say beyond EDR, obviously firewalls are critical, right? You can't have, you need to have a generational firewall that is obviously keeping up with the current threat levels that we have. So,
Absolutely.
we're gonna assume that customers probably have that, but if you were at a high level, some of the things you'd want to see from, say a firewall prior to it ever even getting to the point where you have them on endpoints, but just, what's at your gateway and what's keeping you protected there?
Yeah, like hopefully we're deploying application aware, layer 7 firewalls. Hopefully we're able to do like SSL decryption. So we're able to like actually inspect, so the firewall can actually see the traffic and make decisions on like what's bad or not, because it's pretty easy these days to hide things in SSL and HTTPS traffic. You want to make sure it's actually licensed for all the next generation features that it's supposed to have. That's a big one. You can't just buy it and throw it in and not pay for the licensing. And, just hopefully it's kept up to date. That's important too.
I was going to say the next generation firewalls now, yes, you do have to purchase the hardware, but a lot of it is just like Mike's saying, it's those subscriptions that you're really paying for. It's the software that's doing the majority of the work.
Yeah, so I kind of mushed together application aware in layer 7. So like compared to an old Cisco ASA that's all port based, like internet traffic goes over port 3, and anything that comes over port 3 is internet traffic, and that's what the firewall sees, and it believes you. An application of aware firewall will look at traffic, and even if it says, hey, this should go over port 3, and it sees maybe it's FTP, it should go over 22 or 21. No, it's FTP traffic, put it over there. Oh, you don't allow FTP, we can block it. So it's another layer of like not trusting just whatever, is sent to it.
Yeah, the idea of verifying sources, digging into packets, looking at them closer, inspecting them, right? I mean, those are some of the things you need as far as just the quantity of traffic coming in some of these environments is pretty substantial, right?
Yeah. It's kind of mind-blowing how much traffic goes through like a big firewall.
Which is a great kind of place to take a turn here is like you have, obviously we talked about end user training, you got EDR, you have firewalls, you have substantial amounts of data. You have the threat of AI, right? So the same tools that we're using to, create poetry for our kids' 6th grade project or whatever is the same. It's the same tool. It's going to be used for creating emails that have links that are a threat, right? So they're going to be much higher quality than they've been in the past, like you were saying previously to jumping on here, but also just, obviously there's a point where there's only so many humans on a team, only so many humans can look at threats. There's a large quantity of potential threats, many of those being null, right, at the end of the day. But, so fighting AI with AI, right? So is that kind of where you see security going, obviously in the coming months, coming years? It's obviously there already in many ways, but.
Yeah, in some fashion, it's been happening for a while, using like machine learning and like big data models on, giant data lakes of logs to parse through, an insane amount of data to try and make some connection and correlation, between your firewall and your endpoints and maybe your logs from Azure, all that stuff. And there's no way for a person to do that. Like from the get-go, something has to pare it down and make it usable. And so that's going to be a big spot for sure, or is a big spot.
Yeah, the pure numbers of potential, obviously traffic flagged in some of our larger environments. I mean, just some of those numbers I've heard in the past are extremely substantial. I mean, they're not something humans could ever dig through, right?
Yeah. And the benefit of it is like you're making a second pass at all this data, right? So the firewall will flag stuff on its own through its own correlation engines and, threat detection or whatever. And then the AI that's just taking the raw data can also make its own kind of pass on it and see stuff that maybe it could have missed because firewall's not meant to look at it that way.
In school districts, or we've got, talking about what hackers are going after, right? You've got student data that's worth 4 to 5 times to have adults on the dark web, right? And then not only that, but you obviously have some form of ransom that's taking place at points just because they know the size of the organization. And so as long as hackers continue to get paid, they're going to continue to hack, right? Just like,
yeah, they're getting it's millions, and depending on the organization, Some of the information that I've received on that topic is they will actually look at their budgets, and they will pinpoint a price point that will hurt, but they can afford. So we're working with very sophisticated teams, right? Of bad actors trying to get money. There's no organization they won't hit.
Yeah, and some of that is obviously early on, years and years ago when we were taking on environments that have been hacked, and you get through the process, and the hackers would say, "Yeah, it was great doing business with you. It's a pleasure," and you go, "No, there was no pleasure here." But at the end of the day, it shows they're service organizations, right? So when you have, obviously, Michael, the numbers can continue to change, but environments are often affected for some period of time prior to hackers taking action, which shows that they have a backlog on their end. So
it's gotten even more sophisticated these days, where you have crews that are not, we'll call them full stack, right? They're not breaking in and then ransoming and then doing the whole thing. They have crews that only go around and they get footholds into organizations, and they sell the footholds to gangs who will then ransomware. So there's a whole business of just going around getting into places, but not necessarily doing anything with it and selling it to somebody who will.
Yeah, and they have business models, right? And they only have so many people as well, and so many people that can actually do the work and engage with, I guess, their customer in a sense that they've hacked. But at the end of the day, it's, it also gives us an opening where we can say, okay, well, if we know that the average kind of foothold, as an example, is a year and a half, there's been points where it's been as high as 2 years that they're sitting inside environments, right, without being acknowledged, laying there dormant. If we can actually stop those entrances with EDR and some of these different tools we talked about today, that's a huge advantage for the customer, right?
I think backups need to just be touched. Making sure that you have a solid backup scheme. You've got immutable backups. And if you're unfamiliar with that term, it means that you have a copy of your backup that you can't even change. A lot of software providers for your backup systems will offer this. It just means that in the event of ransomware, or for some reason they get in and just wipe out your backups, you still have a golden copy, right? A copy that no matter what is going to be untouched. I think that's very important when we talk about cybersecurity.
Yeah, can you give an example, Warren, of like when you see like how you've seen that set up and kind of how organizations are using that? Like what are they doing that's different than what when you walk in, they don't have it. Obviously, it's usually on premise, or they're just replicating it on site, which is where we see kind of the most detrimental impact when they get hacked, in particular, because it's so easy to access. But what you're talking about is obviously there's tools in place that protect those backups from being accessible, right?
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to come from whatever flavor of backups that you're running. You're going to get that as a service, whether it's through your offsite backups, which are going to be stored in the cloud, and then that service is going to hold a copy that you can't touch at all. Even if you made a phone call and said, "Hey, just wipe this backup," no, you can't do anything. Even the ones that are on premise, there are some devices out there that will hold an immutable backup that you can't even really see unless you call their support to get access to just retrieve it. Again, can't delete it. So there's many ways. So when you're looking at your backup system, you'll want to poke your provider, whoever you're going through, to see if that's something that they offer.
Sounds like another hat, maybe, or t-shirt, poke your provider. Yeah?
Yes, totally.
Worst case scenario, that's what we see bringing organizations back to life, right? From a hacking event, is their ability to restore from a backup, a recent backup in particular. They may have a little bit of data loss, maybe a day or so, or whatever the case is, but it's better than being down for a week or 2 weeks or paying some enormous ransom, right? So
yeah, and having all the data just gone. That's we've seen those situations. If they can get into the backup system and wipe everything, and you don't have that, or they've they've corrupted some of the backups, or they've locked them, and those are getting replicated to the cloud, those are toast. So
yeah.
Yep.
No, that's a great point. Very great point. I think that's critical for customers. I mean, that would be honestly many steps. That'd be step one before you even implement some of these security tools, right? Just making sure your backups are in place for all kinds of other reasons, right? Beyond just getting hacked, natural disasters, etc. for sure. So this is great, guys. Super helpful. Anything else you guys think we should touch on before we end the session today?
multi-factor authentication, second form of authentication, that annoying code that you've got to pull up on your phone or iPad to log into a lot of sites nowadays, especially your banking sites. Setting that up for your organization on critical systems that hold PII. So the most critical information you've got, social security numbers, date of births, addresses, and even information you wouldn't really think about can be used as leverage. So setting up multi-factor authentication on the admins, right? People that have global access to those systems is first and foremost. That's something I would definitely work on.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you for all that are listening here to the Pathleaders podcast, just on Cybersecurity Month, and just kind of recap. Obviously we've got firewalls, backups are critical. Ensuring that they're protected, particularly from hacking incidents. MFA, EDR, end user training are all critical parts to kind of get your baseline of security defense up and going for sure.